Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandab. 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 Well, as is often the case, when I offer a Dharma message, it's about some trip I've recently taken, and today's no exception. So with that in mind, here we go. Tsuchiya Travel Log, Bismarck, North Dakota, September 5th, 2025, the Snow Country Prison. Brian and I had the privilege of traveling to Bismarck for the dedication of the Snow Country Prison Memorial this past September. This detention center was built on the site of Fort Lincoln, a former military post. The prison was run by the Immigration and Naturalization Service and was used to hold Japanese Americans during World War II. In fact, it held two separate sets of detainees. First, after the Pearl Harbor bombing, Bismarck was one of 3 long-term detention facilities that held Issei community leaders. Then, beginning in early 1945, a second group of prisoners were sent there. These were a group of around 750 dissidents from the Tule Lake incarceration camp, most of whom were young Nisei. This is where the Tsuchiya family story comes in. Prior to the war, the Tsuchiya family lived in Fowler, California, and were members of the Fowler Buddhist Temple. They were a farm family, growing cantaloupe, tomatoes, eggplant, and other produce. The family consisted of parents Kakunosuke and Fude, sons Bill, Paul, Frank, and my father-in-law in the center there, Albert. Frank is the father of Todd and Frank Tsuchiya. About a month prior to Pearl Harbor, the oldest Tsuchiya son, Bill, was drafted into the Army, and he relocated to fulfill his service. Then when Executive Order 9066 was signed, and Japanese Americans along the West Coast were ordered to be evacuated, the remaining 5 Tsuchiyas were sent to the Fresno Fairgrounds. After 5 months there, they were transferred to Jerome, Arkansas. The exact history is a little bit unclear, but at some point, number 2 son Paul comes to Chaska, Minnesota. He was able to find a chicken farmer here to sponsor him, and he was able to leave camp and become a chick sexer. He left directly from Jerome and came to Minnesota. Again, the family history is a little bit murky, but at some point the father, Kakunosuke, decides he's had enough and he indicates his desire to repatriate to Japan. Those seeking repatriation were shipped to Tule Lake, which by then held those who were considered, quote, troublemakers or disloyal. So that left the parents, number 3 son Frank and number 4 son Albert, to be shipped off to Tule Lake. We're very fortunate to have excerpts from my father-in-law's diary during the family's time at Tule Lake. This passage really struck me. April 5th, 1944, Sunday. It's clear. He always offered a weather report for each diary entry. He says, today is Hanamatsuri. We were given candy in Sunday school. I visited father in the stockade. This is the Tule Lake stockade. It's basically a prison within a prison. He then writes a few months later, on June 28th, 1944, Wednesday, clear. I exercised this morning. Military guards were watching us. Today, father is to be transferred to Santa Fe. I went to see him off. It was sad. My eyes were teary. Later, I played baseball. Words of a typical 14-year-old, and yet not typical at all. Working off the details we have, we know that at this time the father, Kakunosuke, is dead set on returning to Japan, and he's sent to the Santa Fe detention facility where renunciates were sent. Frank decided that it was his duty to accompany his elderly father to Japan, so he too renounces his citizenship. Frank is then sent to the Snow Country Prison in Bismarck. By this time in the war, the Bismarck site housed 750 Nisei renunciates. One inmate there by the name of Itaru Ina first coined the term Snow Country Prison in this poem he wrote while being held there. The war has ended. but I'm still in the Snow Country Prison. That's Itaru Ino in that photo, front left, in the light-colored clothing. Now fast forward 80 years. The site of the Snow Country Prison now houses a beautiful and symbolic memorial space on the campus of the United Tribes Technical College on native land. At first, the Tule Lake Memorial Committee approached the college hoping that maybe a plaque could be hung to recognize the incarceration that took place there. But in their generosity, the college leaders offered a piece of land and suggested that a memorial be built. This generosity is remarkable, especially when you consider the relationship that Native people have with the land. The parcel they offered is adjacent to one of the buildings that originally housed Japanese American incarcerees and is now used as an administration building. Working with the college, the Tule Lake Memorial Committee hired an architectural firm to design and build the memorial, with construction beginning in 2023. Every detail of this beautiful memorial was well considered and symbolic. The slate tiles used throughout the memorial were originally part of the roof of the barracks in the Snow Country Prison. The open spaces on the walls evoke kintsugi, the Japanese process of repairing broken ceramics by visibly mending the cracks with gold and silver. These spaces also offer a place for visitors to leave offerings, such as paper cranes, native prayer ties, or other contributions. The open top and exposed rocks of the memorial wall are meant to represent an incomplete journey. And prominent in the center of the memorial is a Four Directions drum circle, which helps emphasize the role of the memorial as a place of healing. We were able to locate Uncle Frank's name on the wall and offered a folded crane to honor him. As the program began, an elder from the Native community offered a smoke blessing to cleanse the space. The president of United Tribes Technical College, Dr. Leander McDonald, opened the event with a beautiful welcome message. And this is where I started to feel the presence of the Dharma and a sense of true connection. He talked so lovingly about his Japanese American family and the brothers who were incarcerated on this land. He acknowledged the suffering and common experiences of loss for both communities, and he shared the trauma of injustice. As he said, this is important work to not only recognize what happened to our Japanese American relatives, but to ourselves. This memorial will show that we're still here, that we've survived, and that now we need to move ahead. Both communities offered performances in the center court on the Four Directions drum circle. First a Native American drum circle, then Taiko Arts Midwest from the Twin Cities, and I Dance Theater from New York City. And again, the overlap of the two cultures brought so much beauty and warmth to the event. Reverend Ron Kobata, a retired BCA minister from the San Francisco Buddhist Church, and Reverend Dr. Duncan Williams, a Zen priest and professor at USC, led us in Buddhist rituals to honor the Fort Lincoln prisoners, especially those who died during their incarceration. Reverend Williams said, "A memorial like the Snow Country Prison Japanese American Internment Memorial helps us to feel the presence of all those who experienced wartime incarceration." The Irecho Book of Names was present too, and given a position of honor at the memorial. Later in the weekend, attendees were offered an opportunity to stamp the names of their ancestors in the book. As is customary in both Japanese American and Native culture, gifts were given. The Japanese American contingent offered lovely handmade leis of folded cranes and draped them around the necks of the tribal representatives. Then it was time for the Native community to offer their gifts. These beautiful, stunning star quilts made by members of the tribal community. They were offered to all of the planners and organizers, the architects and designers, the dancers, and to a representative of the Taiko group. I can't imagine how many hours went into creating these stunning quilts. I left North Dakota with a strong sense of community, a feeling that the teachings of the Dharma are alive and well, and that through mutual respect and honoring our histories, we will be stronger. But now as I reflect back on my experience in North Dakota, I can't help but be struck with the terrible feeling that we're repeating mistakes that we should have learned from long ago. We're seeing our neighbors being persecuted, detained, and traumatized again. I wonder what memorials our children and grandchildren will be creating to acknowledge the suffering being inflicted in 2026. So in my little corner of the world, I will live by the golden chain. I will work hard to keep my link bright and strong. Right now is the time for me to try my best to protect all who are weaker than myself. Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. Namanda.